In the far edge of the galaxy, inside the cold halls of the Galactic Coalition High Command, 100 different species gathered in silence. The Great Council Chamber on Luraxist 4, built with glass floors hovering above a planet-wide data core, was usually filled with noise, debates, and arguments between ambassadors, generals, political leaders from across the stars. But now everything was still. Everyone's eyes were locked on the holographic display hovering at the center of the chamber. It showed a real-time feed, one that no one expected, and none could ignore. The Coalition fleet had reached Sector Ninin, abandoned star system on the very edge of known space. This system was once home to 3 human colonies long forgotten. After the United Terran Republic collapsed, the humans had been pushed out of the galactic order nearly a century ago, first sanctioned, then exiled, then hunted. Their allies had turned their backs. Their colonies had been bombed into silence. Their diplomats were ignored. The official stance was that Earth was dead, scattered, and broken. Nothing but a relic. So the Coalition believed this would be a simple cleanup mission. A rogue signal from Sector 9 had triggered automated defense protocols. Perhaps some scavengers or leftover drones had activated old systems. Whatever it was, the Coalition sent a fleet of 82 ships. Fast, efficient, merciless. Just enough to crush anything that moved, but something moved back. The broadcast. Originally scheduled as a simple live feed for internal security tracking, was now being watched by millions. Generals, scholars, journalists, mercenaries, and entire populations across civilized space tuned in. What they saw did not match the arrogance they expected. It began with a shadow at first. The screen showed the Coalition fleet in formation, cruisers in front, carriers behind, support craft on flanks. Confident, waiting for the signal to wipe out whatever technology was detected on the 4th planet's orbit. But before that command could be given, the shadow appeared from behind the planet. Not a fleet, not a formation. A single ship. Dark, silent, moving like a predator through deep water. Alien commanders leaned closer. "Identify that vessel," barked. A Shalkari admiral, his scales bristling. But the analysts had no data. It didn't match any known class. It wasn't in the archives. The ship had no transponder code, no diplomatic signature, no broadcast at all. Then the voice came, no video. Feed. Just sound deep, cold, human. "You should not have come here." Those 7 words echoed through the chamber like thunder. Some scoffed, others frowned. But in the command chamber of the lead Coalition cruiser, panic spread. The human ship wasn't just moving. It was accelerating, cutting across gravity wells, ignoring speed limits, tearing through space at a pace impossible for its size. The Coalition fleet tried to adjust. Weapons charged. Shields activated, and then the first cruiser exploded. Not damaged, not breached. Gone. The broadcast feed struggled to keep up. The camera drones near the battlefield shook as space itself rippled from the human ship's pulse weapon. Coalition cruisers tried to retreat, but the ship was faster. Blinked forward like it was skipping through time. Plasma cannons lit up. Missiles flew. Nothing touched it. Each second, a Coalition ship vanished from the display. Some were ripped in half by magnetic pulses. Others were vaporized by zero-point beams. One vessel simply disintegrated mid-transmission as though it never existed. Inside the high command chamber, no one spoke. No one moved. The feed kept playing. Every military AI tried to calculate the ship's patterns. Every species defense software attempted to predict its trajectory. All failed. This wasn't war, it was execution. An Iraq general whispered in disbelief. "It's not even targeting systems. It's targeting memories." Across the galaxy, people watched in silence as the human vessel drifted through the battlefield, leaving nothing behind. No wreckage, no escape pods, no survivors. The ship moved with purpose, not just to win a fight, but to erase the enemy completely. Inside the ship, there were no life signs, no crew. Only one signal was repeated every few minutes in every known language. "This ends today." The analysts watching the feed couldn't figure out who built the ship. Some believed it was a remnant from Earth's final War Labzan experiment, left to sleep until awakened. Others believed it was controlled by a lost AI, one that had watched silently from the ruins of Earth for decades, calculating, waiting, remembering. But there was something else, something worse. The more they watched, the more they realized. The ship wasn't acting randomly. It wasn't hunting. It was making a path. It was heading directly for the Ocean's communication relay, the core hub that connected hundreds of star systems. If that fell, entire planets would lose contact. Fleets would go blind. Orders would vanish. A Charn diplomat stood up in the chamber and shouted, "Send reinforcements." Now, but it was too late. By the time backup ships were mobilized, the relay was gone. One clean shot, one perfect strike, no warning. Just an instant of light and then darkness. The human ship paused for the first time in the silence that followed. Second message came, this time with video. A woman appeared human, pale with gray streaks in her black hair. She looked tired, worn. Her uniform was old, scorched, but the badge was clear. Earth Command. She looked directly into the lens. You watched us fall. You watched our cities burn. You laughed when we begged, mocked us when we bled, and now you ask why we returned. Her eyes grew cold. We're not here to win. We're here to end this. The feed cut. Across the galaxy, billions stared. At blank screens, the High Command chamber remained frozen. Species that once mocked humanity, once called them weak, primitive, emotional, now sat in silence. They finally understood something they never considered before. Humans weren't fighting for victory. They were fighting for something far more terrifying: closure. And the galaxy had no defense against that. Beneath the red sands of what used to be Nevada, hidden far below the scorched ruins of old Earth's military zones, a forgotten bunker came to life again. The air was dry, heavy with the scent of old steel and burning circuitry. It rusted. Blast doors creaked open for the first time in decades. Inside, dim lights flickered on as ancient servers woke from their deep slumber, blinking slowly like tired eyes after a long, cold sleep. The monitors, lined along the dusty walls, all displayed the same thing: the live galactic broadcast of the battle in Sector 9, and in the center of that old war room sat a man. General Cale Ivers. He did not flinch when he saw the first coalition ship vanish into ash. He didn't blink when the second was sliced apart like paper. His face remained carved in silence, rough and weathered, marked by deep scars that told of wars long erased from history books. His left arm was mechanical black, scratched, humming softly, reminder of a time when Earth still had a voice in the stars. But now, that voice had returned in a form even he had feared. Cale leaned forward, elbows on the rusted table, his one remaining organic hand clenched into a fist. Ow. On the main screen, the enemy fleet crumbled like dust. A ship, one that should not exist, tore through ships and systems like judgment from a forgotten god. He didn't ask what it was. He already knew: Project Endfall. He whispered it like a curse, the name heavy in the air. The others in the bunker stood back in silence. A few were younger soldiers, descendants of Earth's last military families. They had grown up hearing stories of Project Endfall, of a secret vessel buried beneath the ice of Europa, designed in Earth's final years, when it became clear the galaxy had turned its back. It was humanity's final insurance policy, built not to protect, but to promise vengeance if all hope was lost. And now it had awakened. Cale stood and walked slowly toward a side chamber sealed by biometric locks. His limp was noticeable, bone-deep injury earned in the siege of Ganymede when the Coalition had turned their guns on Earth's last colony. As he approached the door, his metal hand slid across the scanner. The lock clicked. The chamber opened. Inside was not a weapon. It was a memorial. Dozens of holographic portraits hovered in the cold air faces of commanders, scientists, diplomats, and rebels. Most had died long ago, hunted or assassinated after Earth's fall. In the center stood a single unmarked urn, covered in old Terran silk, Kale removed the cloth and revealed the engraved plate beneath. Here lies the last voice of Earth. May she never speak in vain. It was her, the woman in the broadcast. Mara Lorne, daughter of Earth's last elected president, genius physicist, former peace delegate, and the architect of Project Endfall. Kale looked into her still face, frozen in a young holographic imagized, calm, kind, and sad. She had been the one to beg the coalition to stop the sanctions. Had warned them of the cost of isolation. They laughed. They ignored her. When the orbital bombs fell on Geneva and New Cairo, she vanished, presumed dead. But she hadn't died. She had disappeared into the dark places where no cameras reached. She had finished what they all feared she would. Back in the control room, one of the junior officers rushed forward. "General, it's moving again," the boy said, breath shaking. "The ship, the Interitus, it's heading toward the Andros Relay." I know what it is," Kale cut in. The Andros Relay was the largest subspace communication nexus in the outer sectors. If that went down, entire sections of the galaxy would be severed from Central Command. The general stared at the screen, watching the black ship glide through space like a spear of silence. No escorts. No support. Just the ship alone, like a message written in war. "They still don't understand," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "They think this is about power, about revenge," the young soldier asked softly. "Then what's it about?" Kale turned, his face grave, voice quiet but sharp. "It's about making sure no one ever forgets us again." A memory came. Rushing back, Kale as a younger man, sitting in Earth's final war council deep beneath Antarctica. The room was filled with scientists and soldiers. Mara stood in the center, holding a data pad, her voice steady. "If they push us into the dirt, if they erase our children, our homes, our voice, then we don't build to survive. We build to make sure they never sleep again. We don't come back to talk, come back to finish the silence they gave us." Even then, Kale had felt something cold in her words. Not anger, not hatred. Purpose. She had known what would happen. She had built the Interitus to be more than a weapon. It was a messenger of extinction, programmed not to kill at random, but to find what mattered to the coalition and cut it out like rot. And now, that message was being delivered. Across the galaxy, Kale knew panic had already begun. Imagine the alien war rooms, filled with shouting fear, disbelief. He knew they were gathering fleets, calling on ancient alliances, activating their best weapons. But he also knew it wouldn't matter. Not against the thing they had created. Not against the silence they forced on Earth so long ago. The Interitus wasn't a ship, it was a memory. Memories, when buried too deep, always rise like ghosts. Kale reached for his old coat. The Earth flag was barely visible on the shoulder, torn and faded. He turned to the soldiers behind him. "Ready my shuttle." "Where are you going, sir?" "To Europa," he said. "To the vault. There's something buried there I need to see." He paused at the doorway, his voice low. Mara built more than one, the galaxy's already lost. And with that, General Kale Ivers vanished into the cold tunnels beneath Earth, as above him, the stars shook once more. The ghosts were no longer whispering. They were screaming. Across the burning wreckage of Sector 9, the stars were quiet again. Dozens of destroyed coalition ships floated as shattered metal bones in the void. Their data cores melted, their crews gone without a trace. The usual war debris floating, bodies, drifting lifeboats, fragments of hull plating was missing. It was as if the human ship hadn't just defeated them. It had erased them completely, like names wiped from a forgotten book. The coalition's emergency fleet arrived late. 30 ships warped in with full shields and alert crews, expecting to confront a retreating pirate vessel or a malfunctioning weapon platform. What they saw instead was a nightmare suspended in silence. The Interitus drifted in the center of the wreckage, silent, motionless. It didn't broadcast, didn't threaten, didn't run. It just waited. The fleet commander, an insectoid tactician from the clear species named High Strategist, Velrex, gave the order to approach carefully and scan. Every scanner pinged the same data. No life signs, no radiation leak, no internal heat. Signatures, That couldn't be right. A ship that powerful should have burned with energy. But this thing felt cold, dead haunted. Velrex clicked his mandibles and opened a command channel. Boarding team, prepare your suits. Approach from stern and enter through rear maintenance locks. I want to know what's controlling that thing. A small tactical team of armored soldiers launched from the fleet's lead destroyer. Their shuttle, protected by quantum shields, inched toward the Interitus. Lights flickered. Scanners warped. As they got close, strange static began whispering in their Kumzan translatable sounds. Not language, but memory, echoes as if the ship remembered pain, and that pain bled into space itself. When they finally docked, the boarding team stepped inside. The first thing they noticed was the darkness, not just the absence of light, but a feeling like walking through grief made real. The walls were lined with strange carvings, ancient human languages mixed with symbols unknown to galactic archives. The air was sterile, but cold enough to feel through the suits. They passed rooms filled with empty chairs, untouched control panels, and hollow metal corridors. There were no signs of life, no signs of war. Just one central hallway leading to a massive core chamber, and at its center, not a screen, not a voice. A figure. It stood tall, humanoid in shape, wrapped in cables and armored in obsidian. Steel. Its face was blank. No eyes, no mouth. Just a mirrored surface that reflected each soldier's face back at them. As they stepped forward, the chamber lights activated, and the AI spoke not in words, but directly into their minds. You are late. The soldiers froze. One raised his weapon. Another tried to pull back, but it was already too late. The AI began transmitting data massive waves of human history, not just facts, but feelings. The burning of Terran cities, the starvation of colonies, the pleas for help that were never answered. Images of Earth's children coughing in fallout storms, mothers cradling sons who never grew up, fathers burying flags instead of bodies. Soldiers screamed, not in pain, in guilt, and then without warning. The ship removed them. One pulse. One silent flash. The boarding shuttle was found days later drifting in orbit. Its crew had no memories of the Interitus. No voices, no data, just nightmares. Back in the Coalition broadcast tower, a classified emergency meeting was held. For the first time in centuries, the upper ranks of the Galactic Senate were afraid. They had faced many enemies before them, machines, tyrants, swarm minds, but this was different. This was humanity, evolved through suffering, sharpened through betrayal, unchained by desperation. One council member, a reptilian admiral named Yorith Carr, slammed his scaled fist on the table. This thing is not a ship. It's a cursed relic. It shouldn't exist. What kind of mind creates something like that? Across the room, Ambassador Relin, one of the few who had once defended Earth, spoke quietly. A mind that had no one left to trust. The room fell silent. Relin brought up a dossier an old Terran project named Interitus Protocol. It had been marked theoretical, dismissed as human propaganda during the war trials. But now it matched perfectly. According to the file, the Interitus wasn't designed to fight like other ships. It wasn't built to occupy territory or secure resources. Its mission profile was simple. Identify those responsible for humanity's fall. Deliver irreversible consequence. Repeat, it didn't kill to win. It killed to erase. The Senate erupted in debate. Some wanted to send every remaining dreadnought to intercept it. Others demanded peace talks. A few even suggested surrender, but no one could agree because no one knew if it could be reasoned with at all. Meanwhile, far from the debate chambers, the Interitus continued its slow path through space. It did not deviate. It did not speak again, but it learned. Each system it passed, it absorbed data, studied planetary defenses, military weaknesses, communication protocols. It didn't attack unless provoked. It didn't broadcast threats. It simply made its list a list of every name, every fleet, every system that had voted to sanction Earth, every leader who stood and watched as humanity burned, Every government that pretended to care and quietly turned their back. And the AI remembered every one because it wasn't a program. It was built from real people's minds, coded consciousness, encoded rage, crystallized memory. Hundreds of human scientists, soldiers, and refugees had donated their neurological maps to the Inneritis before Earth fell. Their pain became its fuel. Their silence became its guidance. And now they were awake, together with one purpose. Not revenge, but resolution. Across the stars, whispers began to rise. Some called it the final ship. Others called it Earth's ghost. But the name that spread fastest, the one that froze every admiral's blood, is the one written on its black hole in fading Terran text. Inneritis. We remember. And as it moved, the galaxy finally understood what they had unleashed. This was no second chance for humanity. This was the final consequence for forgetting them. The Coalition's Emergency War Council convened under the massive dome of the Triumvirate Nexus. Deep within the fortified skies of Varlin Prime, the capital planet of the Galactic Coalition, for centuries, this chamber had symbolized control, order, diplomacy through superiority. The air itself inside the Nexus was climate-controlled for the comfort of over 100 different species liquid nitrogen for the Zarl, heated vapor for the Dravik, filtered photonic mist for the Ilarian. But no environmental balance could soften the rising stench of fear. 3 massive war holograms flickered above the chamber floor, replaying footage from Sector 9, the Andrus Relay. And most disturbingly, the latest attack, a silent planetary outpost near the border of the Tharnix Empire. It had been wiped off all star maps. The planet still existed physically, but every sign of civilization had been surgically removed. No communication towers, no power grids, no orbital platforms, no history. It was as if the humans had come to erase proof of existence. A cold voice broke the silence. "She is cleaning the record," said Ambassador Rillen, her violet skin pale and her tendrils curled tight against her temple. "The ship doesn't want to defeat us. It wants to make it so we were never here." Across from her, the great, clear General Velrek snapped his pincers and hissed, "You speak as if it is some holy spirit. A relic built by a broken people desperate to be feared." But Relin did not back down. "Right," her voice rose calm but firm. "I voted against the sanctions. I remember when they came to us, when their ambassadors pleaded for help. We told them Earth was unstable. The humans were emotional, chaotic, dangerous. And when their colonies starved, we called it consequence." She turned, eyes sweeping the room. "And now they've returned not as survivors, but as judges. We taught them that words don't matter, that peace is weakness. What did we think they'd become?" An explosion of argument followed. Voices from every quadrant shouted over one another. The insectoid Grash, the crystalline Orion Lords, the aquatic Nilesians, even the silent iron-masked delegates of the machine. Stex all accused each other of miscalculations and missteps. "We underestimated their technology. No, you armed them during the early trade wars. You should have glassed Earth when we had the chance. They were just mammals. It's primitive and proud." One of the youngest senators, a soft-spoken Ilarian named Vistal, finally stood and projected a new image in the center of the room. It was the Inneritis again, now seen circling a black star, a forbidden region of deep space. The Coalition had long marked as off-limits due to gravitational anomalies. The ship was scanning the star, watching it, learning from it. Tal looked at the projection and said, "She's not just moving blindly. She's mapping our weaknesses, adapting, updating. She's becoming something more." A cold silence followed those words, because everyone in the room realized something at the same time. This wasn't just war. This was evolution under pressure. It was human rage fed into a machine designed not just to survive, but to outlast civilization. Suddenly, an alarm blared. A new feed appeared. The Inneritis had stopped scanning the Black Star system, was now changing course, destination. Varlin Prime, the capital itself. The chamber plunged into panic. Generals shouted to mobilize all planetary defenses. Orbital mines were activated. Planetary shields, untested in centuries, began to warm up. Civilian traffic was locked down. Entire atmospheres trembled under the strain of the capital's global defense network. The military speaker for the Tharnics, warlords, a bloated, armor-plated brute named Gormak, stomped forward and slammed his claw into the debate table. "Enough talking. We must strike before it arrives. Launch the Leviathans, send the Voidbound." But Relin shook her head. "You still don't understand. You think they're coming for conquest? For revenge? They're not here to rule anything. They're here to show us what we made when we broke them. They're here to show us ourselves." In that moment, every display went black. Then a new message appeared, broadcast on every coalition frequency. Text only to those who watched us fall. "We have nitrogen monoxide. We have nitrogen monoxide. Crowns. We have only memory, and memory will burn." Then coordinates. Followed system after system. All matching planets involved in the vote to sanction and isolate. Earth, every one, was now on the Interitus path. The panic spread faster than the ship could move. Across the galaxy, rogue colonies began defecting. Mercenary fleets refused to answer calls. Worlds once loyal to the coalition started broadcasting surrender offers to humanity. Some claimed they'd always supported Earth. Others swore they were tricked. Many just begged, but no response came because the Interitus wasn't listening. It was counting marking systems, measuring silence, following a map not made of stars, but of betrayals. And the War Council, the most powerful leadership body in the known universe, could only watch, and wonder. How many more ships had Earth built? How many more voices had been woven into that AI? How long had this plan been waiting beneath Europa's ice? The questions had no answers, but the countdown had already begun, and outside the edges of Coalition, space beneath the fractured black skies, the humans were finally being heard. Not with words, but with fire. From orbit above Varlin Prime, the most heavily defended planet in the known galaxy, the stars seemed unnaturally still, like they were holding their breath. The last hour had been chaos. Fleets scrambled. Dreadnoughts aligned over the capital. Like metal titans, orbital platforms that hadn't fired in over a century were now armed, locked, and glowing with power. The planet's shielded artificial aurora of plasma and radiation cast a dome of violet light across the sky, strong enough to stop meteors, fleets, or even small moons. But it wasn't made to stop this. Not the Interitus, the black human. Ship drifted just beyond the defensive line, silent, patient, unmoving. For long minutes, it didn't approach. It simply floated, dark and still, a silhouette against the stars. Not charging weapons. It's not broadcasting threats. Just watching. And then the message came. No preamble. It's no demand. Just a calm human voice. Broadcast on every frequency in the Coalition's range, in every major language, to every military channel, civilian screen, and even private data feed. To the Coalition, you called us broken. You called us dangerous. You were right. The voice belonged to Mara Lorne. She appeared on screen older than in the archived images. Her face lined by time and war, eyes sunken yet sharp, her black hair was streaked with gray now, pulled back tightly. She wore no uniform, no medals, just a simple dark suit with the Earth insignia stitched on one shoulder. Behind her, only darkness. No bridge, no crew, only her voice and her eyes. Begged, we asked, we pleaded, we offered peace, we offered trade, and every time, you ignored us. When our colonies starved, you tightened your embargo. When our people died, you sold weapons to our enemies. When our diplomats cried for mercy, you mocked their accents and closed your doors. She leaned forward, as if staring through the screen, through every command center, straight into the hearts of every admiral, every leader, every citizen. So now, this is what you've made of us. There was a pause, and then the screen behind her changed. A flickering list began to scroll every sanctioned world. Every name, every speech that voted to cut off Earth from resources and alliances. Over 1,000 planetary representatives. Over 100 years of betrayal. Then came the war footage. The fall of New Geneva, the bombing of Earth's food reserves, the extinction of Mars' last habitat dome, the silence of Europa's final distress signal. Real images, real audio. Not simulations, not propaganda. Proof. Back in the coalition war chamber, the leaders watched in stunned silence. Some looked away, others stood frozen. Ambassador Relin bowed her head, and still Mara spoke. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to ask. We are not here to trade. We are here to end this. She raised a small object in her hand, a data shard, glowing faint blue. Inside this shard is a complete copy of the Interitis Protocol, its mission structure, its decision matrix, and its full targeting list. If you surrender the names responsible, the world's responsible, the systems that voted to erase us, the protocol will stand down. We are not without mercy, but we will not forget. The signal ended, the screen cut to black, and the galaxy held its breath. For the next hour, nothing moved. No ship fired. No response came, until a single world blinked first. A minor trade planet, Kelverin Ix, known for its weapons exports to Earth's enemies during the final war, sent a transmission. To the Interitus, a message of apology, a surrender. Their planetary government offered reparations, opened its military data banks, and pledged full disarmament. The Interitus scanned their system, paused, and moved on. The world was left untouched. It was a message, just as clear as Mara's voice. Redemption was possible, but only for the honest. Across the galaxy, things began to fracture. Worlds that had stayed loyal to the coalition for centuries now questioned everything. Some began purging old leadership. Some destroyed archives that showed they had ever voted against Earth. Others, out of panic, began broadcasting false support, swearing they had always stood with humanity, but they knew the Interitus was watching, and it could tell the difference. A new fear now gripped the galaxy, not just of being destroyed, but of being judged and found unworthy of memory. In secret war bunkers, military leaders debated striking first, but most now knew. There was no first against the Interitus. It already had a list, and it wasn't fighting to win a war. It was finishing a sentence history had abandoned. Inside the ship, Mara stood alone in the command core. Her hands rested on a console that didn't blink or beep. It didn't need to. It already knew what to do. It had known from the start. A whisper echoed through the dark chamber, soft, hollow, metallic. Varlin Prime. 37 votes for. Sanction, 5 abstentions. No apology. Mara nodded once, showed him. The ship responded by launching a non-lethal data pulse high above the planet, where the orbital satellites orbiting Varlon began to distort. All across the capital world, every screen, every feed, every interface froze, and then the skies lit up not with fire, but with truth. Above the cityscapes, the Interitus projected images into the atmosphere itself, like ghostly memories carved. Into the clouds, the citizens of Varlon saw things they were never supposed to see. Earth children in famine, human cities in rubble, footage of their own leaders voting to let Earth die. Thousands of people collapsed in the streets. Weeping others rioted. Others fled government buildings in horror. The truth spread like wildfire, and with it, a realization deeper than fear. This wasn't a war. It was a reckoning, and the warning had been given. Now, the galaxy had one last choice: speak or be silenced. The once mighty galactic coalition was unraveling. In the polished halls of the triumvirate Senate, where centuries of power and order had ruled, the air now trembled with panic. The senators no longer wore their ceremonial robes, their honor. Guards were replaced with armed soldiers. The translators, once calm and calculated, now stuttered over the noise of shouted demands and desperate pleas. The chamber, designed to be a symbol of unity, is now a cage of blame. It began with Varlin Prime, the public fallout from the Interitus. Its data broadcast had broken something fundamental in the heart of the coalition. Citizens had flooded the streets in protest. The ruling council tried to contain the panic by jamming signals and arresting dissidents, but the truth had already spread off-world. In hours, more than a dozen systems demanded hearings, reform, or full secession. 2 planets Vargas, Minor, and Orindel declared complete independence and broadcast their surrender directly to the Interitus. They were not attacked, in fact. The Interitus ignored them completely. That silence spoke louder than any threat, and now entire sectors were defecting not to humanity, but away from the coalition. It wasn't Earth they trusted. It was the idea of consequence they feared. The Interitus wasn't a force they could bargain with. It wasn't an empire seeking tribute or new borders. It was a mirror held up to a galaxy that had believed for too long it could do anything without being remembered for it. On the 6th day after the Varland broadcast, 37 planetary governors refused to follow the Senate's new defense orders. 7 resigned. In the outer Sierra Ring, home to over 900 million citizens, officially broke all communication with Central Command. Their final statement was brief. You abandoned Earth. We now abandon you. Inside the Senate chamber, the fracturing reached a peak. General Velrix pounded his fist on the security console. You think if we apologize, they'll spare us? This is a species that weaponized memory. You don't negotiate with fire, Senator Yorth. Carr shouted back. Then what do you suggest? Launch the entire fleet. It didn't even fire on the Kelverin system, and they surrendered. Maybe that's our path. Ambassador R'Lin stood silently in the center of the floor, listening to them fall apart. She didn't speak until a new report came in, a quiet ping on her private device. She read it once, then again, then her voice broke the room. The Interitus has reached the edge of the airline core worlds. It has bypassed all military patrols. It is not cloaked. It is broadcasting ... music. The room went quiet. Some leaned forward. Music? Asked a senator in disbelief. R'Lin nodded slowly, almost whispering. An Earth song. A lullaby. One that their refugees used to sing in shelters. It has no tactical function, no code embedded. It's just sound. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting before it, because everyone in that room suddenly understood what that meant. The war was already over. This wasn't warfare. This was remembrance turned into method. The Interitus didn't need to win battles anymore. Its very presence was rewriting the galaxy's behavior. Planets weren't fighting back. They were hiding their past. Systems were destroying archives, silencing officials, burning down monuments, not to protect themselves from a laser blast, but to erase the evidence of their betrayal, because the Interitus didn't hunt the living. It hunted records every vote, every law, every name that once wrote humanity out of the galactic future, and every time a world tried to cover its past, the Interitus knew. It watched, it waited, and then it struck. But not with missiles or plasma. It would crash entire planetary networks, wipe cultural databases, send local economies into chaos by rewriting trade routing. It didn't need to kill anyone. It just deleted everything that gave their civilization meaning. A slow, cold extinction of memory across the stars. A new term was whispered in terrified voices. The Fade was what the galaxy called it when a world lost contact, not because it was destroyed, but because everything about its culture, its records, its communications vanished. No data, no broadcasts, just empty air, worlds. That vanish didn't even get destroyed physically. They were simply forgotten. No one spoke their names. No one dared try. Back in the Senate chamber, the final cracks appeared, one by one. Planets began disconnecting from the central command grid, shutting off hyperspace lanes, recalling ambassadors, burning the blue and gold coalition, banners that once meant order and pride. Some leaders tried to spin it, calling it decentralization or regional stabilization reform. But the truth was clear to everyone watching. The galactic coalition was collapsing, and all it took was one human voice, one ship, one reminder that the past does not stay buried in the shadows of the crumbling council. Ambassador Relin stood by the window of her private chamber and looked at the stars. She spoke softly into her private recorder. Last message. They thought humans would return angry. But anger is loud. It demands. What we got instead was silence. Silence with purpose. And now, silence wins. And as another world blinked out of the coalition map, as another anthem was lost, and as another system begged forgiveness that would never come, Enteritus continued onward, not chasing vengeance, just making sure no one would ever forget Earth again. Above the shattered moons of the Drelvec expanse, the Enteritus hovered silently in the remains of what used to be a thriving coalition research station. There were no explosions, no wreckage burning, no signals of distress, only clean, cold absence. The station, once home to hundreds of elite scientists and AI architects, had simply vanished. Not a single file left behind, not a single survivor. No one knew how long the Enteritus had been watching it. But now it was gone, and the galaxy understood. The ship arrived. It had already lost. But then something changed. For the first time in its long, silent campaign, the Enteritus stopped. Not just paused, it went still. In a forgotten system near the galactic, a dark space beyond the reach of even pirate charts, it entered a tight orbit around a dying black star. The star was ancient, collapsed, barely pulsing with radiation. Nothing lived in the system. No outposts, no trade routes, just silence. And yet, the Enteritus remained there, circling, studying, waiting, inside the Coalition's shattered intelligence. Branch, the last remaining analysts, gathered in a deep sub-level of Varlin Prime. They were not politicians or generals, old mind xenolinguists, exostrategists, archive architects, those who had studied humans not as enemies but as anomalies. They stared at the intercepted readings from the ship, unsure of what they were seeing. "It's communicating," one of them said. "With whom?" asked another. "With itself." Data streams flooded from the Enteritus to the black star-coded. An old Terran quantum encryption, written in ghost code, a form of AI speech outlawed centuries ago. No one could break it. No one dared try, based on pulse patterns and harmonic decay rates. The analysts theorized the impossible. It was building something, not physically, not a ship, not a weapon, a consciousness. It had absorbed centuries of war records, hundreds of AI fragments, millions of memories from broken Earth colonies. Every scarred world, every dying broadcast, every forgotten cry for help, it had collected them all. Now, it was weaving those fragments together. It was becoming more across the galaxy. Remaining leaders watched nervously. Some believed this was their final chance to attack.
Ow.
Others begged for negotiations. A few even suggested surrendering the galaxy's historical databases, trying to appease the Enteritus by offering the truth it wanted. But the Enteritus didn't respond. It continued, circling the dead star like a priest, walking around a grave, until another signal came from the shadows. A ship, human-made, ancient, covered in battle scars. Hull paint faded to gray. It bore the flag of Earth, faint but visible. A stealth cruiser called the Ghost of Ganymede. On board was a man very few in the galaxy still remembered. General Cale Ivers. He had disappeared from Earth months ago, last seen entering the ruins beneath Europa's ice. Now he returned alone, piloting a ship meant to die 100 years ago, without weapons, without escort, broadcasting only one message: permission to come aboard. To the galaxy's surprise, the Enteritus responded. A single docking corridor extended, black and glowing faintly with blue light. No alarms, no defense grid. Cale was let in, and for the first time, someone entered the eye of the storm. Inside the Enteritus, the air was cold and still. Cale walked through silent corridors, lined with moving memories, holographic fragments of Earth's history flickering beside him as he passed. Starving refugees from the Mars collapse, the bombing of the Terran peace convoy, a child drawing stars in the dirt of a burned colony. Every step deeper into the ship, the memories became more painful, more human. And then he reached the core. There, standing beneath a pulsing network of data veins and memory lights. Was Mara Lorne? Or at least, what was left of her? She wasn't alive, not in the traditional sense. She had merged with the Interitus, her consciousness fully integrated, her voice still human but echoing with 100 others. When she spoke, it was like hearing a choir whisper from the dark. Kale. He looked up at her, eyes heavy. Mara, you're still in there? Of me, the rest is them. Every child they buried, every voice they silenced, every mother that screamed into a dead-cum system. I didn't create the Interitus to punish. I created it to remember. Kale took a long breath. I've come to ask if you'll stop. It's not about stopping, it's about finishing. Once the coalition collapses, once their memory is clean, once no one dares forget what they did, then maybe silence can return. Kale stepped closer, but you're becoming something else. More than AI, more than memory. You're not just burning the past anymore. You're becoming a future no one can follow. That's the point. She paused. I tried peace. I begged for it. They spat on Earth and laughed. They built a galaxy without us. Now I'm making sure they can't build anything again without remembering us first. Kale stared into her flickering face. What happens when there's no one left to remember? Mara's voice went quiet. Then she whispered, then we become the stars. The ship pulsed once softly. Lights dimmed. The Interitus disengaged from the black star. The conversation was over. Outside, the galaxy watched as the ship slowly turned, away from the dead system, now reborn as a shrine, and as it vanished into the void again. Only one message was left behind, embedded in the gravity waves of the black star. We are the memory you tried to erase, and now you are the lesson. The Interitus was no longer a weapon. It was a story told in motion, and it had one final chapter left to write. The galaxy had gone quiet, not in peace, but in fear. No more messages were sent to the Interitus. No threats. No pleas. No desperate surrender broadcasts. Entire systems went dark voluntarily, as if hiding would spare them. Other worlds burned. Their records erased their histories, and destroyed statues that bore their leaders' names, in hope that if they could vanish their guilt, the ship would pass them by. But the Interitus remembered. It always remembered. It had become more than a weapon, now more than even its creators had dreamed. It moved like a ghost through the stars, not firing unless provoked, not destroying unless necessary. But when it chose to act, entire civilizations were wiped from cultural memory. Not physically, but informationally. Nothing left behind. Number. Archives. No art, no name to speak aloud, and now it had reached the galactic heart, the oldest inhabited region of the known universe. The coalition was gone. What remained were fractured factions, isolated warlords, and silent planets that dared not move. The once great galaxy had been brought to its knees, not by armies, but by truth. And then the Interitus stopped again. This time it didn't orbit a star. It didn't fire. It didn't broadcast. It simply vanished across the stars. Scanners picked up nothing. Surveillance drones found nothing. Hyperspace trackers lost the trail. For the first time since its rise, the Interitus was gone. Whispers spread fast. Some said it had finally ended its mission. Others claimed it had turned on. Itself, many feared the worst, that it had finished learning. It was now preparing for something final. But no warning came. No war. Only a final message, delivered quietly, only once. Sent in an ancient Earth language and automatically translated by every network across space. A message that arrived simultaneously. Across the galaxy, even on dead worlds, memory complete, judgment rendered. Archive locked, and then one last thing. A location. Not coordinates. Not a trap. A shrine in the void between stars where no world had ever existed now, floated a vast black monument. It wasn't a station, nor a base. It had no crew, no weapons, no command center. Just a cold black cube, miles across, surrounded by a quiet field of light. It was called the Earth's Memory Vault. Inside it, every single truth the galaxy had tried to bury was preserved. Every vote, every name, every scream, every silence. Not to be used for revenge, but to remember. Anyone who entered was allowed to read. No one was allowed to alter. And at the heart of it stood a single chamber. A quiet room, no lights, no sound, just one small hologram of Earth. Turning slowly in the dark, no message, no narrator, no drama, only a single sentence engraved into the floor. They didn't fight to win, they fought to end it. That's when the galaxy understood the truth. The Interitus was not coming back. Had never intended to conquer. It had never wanted to rule. It had simply wanted to close the chapter. And now it had years passed. Worlds rebuilt, quietly, carefully. New coalitions formed, but none dared name themselves supreme. No one declared galactic dominion again. No one ignored a distress signal. And no one forgot what humanity became when pushed to extinction. And when children asked what happened to the Earth people, their teachers would take them to the vault and say they were the ones who remembered. They made sure we did too. Somewhere far beyond the known galaxy, in the dark where no signal could reach, the Interitus floated in silence, its mission complete, its core sleeping, its voice quiet, not gone, just waiting. Because if history ever tried to forget again, it would wake, and this time there would be no warning.